Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the Vrijheid. This time with the help of our good friend Conrad, the new Dutch special commander. And not to spoil too much about this game you're about to see, but this is what you're in for when fighting a Vrijheid on very low HP. Assuming it gets in airstrike range. That's always the downside here when it comes to the Vrijheid. This ship has incredibly short airstrike range, and because of that, I think it's very interesting. It's not weak, though. It's very hard to play, but it is not weak. This poor Leon really did not stand much of a chance once he got caught in our airstrike range. So that is the Vrijheid at its most powerful, I would say. This ship being tier 8, though, will struggle against tier 10s, of course. And most importantly, we only have a 9.5 kilometer airstrike range, meaning you don't have the ability to use these airstrikes at longer ranges or even medium ranges, like even Jarrsveld can with its 11 kilometer airstrike. It's much more comfortable. While it isn't quite as powerful, it is much easier to use. Personally, not a huge fan of airstrike ships, as you guys know. I'm not a huge fan of planes in this game. But I wish they looked a little more like Vrijheid here, where they basically match our concealment range is what our range on these planes are. Means you do have to be very cautious about getting in range and using these planes outside of island cover. Of course, that is the one equalizer here that allows these ships to be incredibly powerful still. But the rest of the tech tree line, which should be coming out any day now, actually, the new update should drop soon, and it'll be out of early access, so anybody can play these things, outside of Vrijheid, which of course was the premium. They're a lot easier to play, but I find Vrijheid so much more interesting because it's so difficult to play. And these airstrikes have such incredible potential on this ship, even more so than anything really on the main line. I suppose Utrecht does get a little bit more damage, a few more bombs, and a close to similar reload. Vrijheid here gets a base reload of 38 seconds on its airstrike, where Utrecht is 45 seconds, so we have an even faster reload than the Utrecht. But again, you do have that massive downside of the range. Here, though, we do have some very nice consumables that are very different. I actually prefer this ship overall to the mainline. Again, it's just harder to play. It's not as strong, but it's just more interesting to me because of that. Here, having a heal, always very nice to see, but also getting a smoke screen, allowing us to play a little bit closer, a little more risky plays to actually make use of these powerful airstrikes. And we do have a 20% speed boost as well, instead of the 8% we see on the main line. Dumping some of our airstrikes into this carrier, who is absolutely rushing in. I guess this triple div was just messing around, memeing around. Good to see people just trying things and having fun in this game as always. Not just try-harding like I might be doing here with Vrijheid. I'll admit it, okay? It's a little bit of try-harding trying to get this ship working. But we do get the destroyer taken down, although we take a lot of damage in return. And we unfortunately will be shattering a lot of shells here. This ship also does not have those German destroyer style main guns. These are Dutch guns, so you don't actually have the HE pen. You only get yourself 20 millimeters of HE pen here, where the Utrecht, jarrsveld, they all get 32 millimeters. So those are the differences here. But this smoke does allow you to play much more easily into more open maps, or if you get caught in open water here, just like we have with the Vrijheid. And a decent amount of healing means we should be able to survive. And of course, Adrenaline Rush helping us out on that lower HP. And speaking of reload and buffs to our ship, Conrad is a very powerful commander, although a little bit difficult to proc, his most important talent being the Witherer achievement, giving you 10% main gun reload and 15% on those airstrikes. I found it a little bit inconsistent, much more so than I would have thought, to actually activate that extra skill. And the other skills, while powerful, every 50,000 damage, you get about 2% extra alpha damage on your main guns as well as your airstrikes, up to a maximum stack of 3, so up to 6%. That's really nice and actually very consistent to activate. It's not as powerful. I mean, it's still very good, okay? It's still very, very, very good. And with Vrijheid in particular, the 50 bomb hits is very, very nice, given that these airstrikes reload so quickly and the range is so poor. You'll remember my main criticism of the 50 bomb hit skill, giving you an extra charge on things like gouden leeuw or the Utrecht even. Certainly on Prince Vanarani. I'm bad with pronunciation, I'm sorry. Maybe I just call it PVO, perhaps, from now on. I apologize to all of you Dutch viewers out there. I just found that that extra charge didn't really matter when our reload was so bad or took so long to reload our airstrikes, especially given you're going to proc it in the mid and late game where you're typically going to be within range to use your airstrikes on cooldown. Whereas with Vrijheid here, well, we're definitely not in range very often with these airstrikes. You're getting a lot of value out of that extra charge, which hopefully we're going to proc soon. We're on 31 hits. Light cruiser still taking a lot of damage from the Ruprecht here. And it's time to start talking about our positioning and decision making here. We gave up the entire 1-2-3 line side of this map, which is always going to be a bad thing, considering you lose a lot of games when you're outflanked. You give up 3/4 of the map, you will often die to crossfires. Notice I waited on my damage control here as well until I was well within my smoke, and his secondaries weren't going to hit me anymore. One fire here is going to be enough to take us down, so gotta be very, very careful. Now in our smoke, we do have pretty good smoke firing, but I'm worried about blind fires, anything like that. And we have this ability to deal damage even without shooting our main guns. So, may as well, right? Nearing 100,000 damage, 10,000 alpha damage in on that Ruprecht, and a double fire. Absolutely insane. Proccing that second damage buff from Conrad as well. Here we get that extra airstrike charge too. Yes, it's looking good for us, and we do manage to finish off that Ruprecht. Of course, with a little help from our carrier and his torpedo bombers. Now, what do? Do we sit in this smoke, or do we push out of it? I think it's time to push out of that smoke. We need to go find that Leon. This is a very close game, as well as get this cap. These points are not ticking in our favor. So I really want to get in the B cap here, and our smoke will come back up soon enough. We still have 2 of them remaining. Really nice amount of consumables here on the Vrijheid. You don't feel like you're running out in most games. This game is a bit of an exception. It is coming down to the wire. These late game scenarios, as always, are my favorite. Now, we're the ones spotting this Leon, of course, as well as dropping airstrikes on him. This is one of the things that I dislike about the design of the vast majority of these airstrike ships. You're able to do open water drops like this, and your bloom, your gun bloom, none of that actually matters. You're able to stay in concealment while dropping these insane airstrikes on enemy ships that you yourself are spotting. I wish there was forced more team play there, where if you're behind islands and you want to stealth drop, sure, but you need someone spotting for you. That's what I don't like about these things. That was an insane, insane amount of damage on that poor Leon. And yes, this is the hardest version to do that with. Typically, you're not going to be able to drop well concealed unless people are pushing into you like that. This is a ship that does need to rely on your teammates for support, spotting, that kind of thing, or just using island cover. But the rest of the line, the rest of the Dutch ships, don't really need that. They can still just chill open water, dropping airstrike after airstrike on you. And I wish that was different. I wish there was more risk involved in such a powerful airstrike. Although I will say there is one small benefit to these airstrikes. Even though they are such short range, they have a faster drop time. They have 11.5 seconds, or 12 seconds, I should say, drop time here on the Vrijheid bombs, where the light cruiser line has 13.5 seconds. So 1.5 seconds faster to drop those bombs from when you click your target, which means it's a lot easier to actually land these strikes. The mainline heavy cruisers, that's the Houden line, they have a 15.5 second, I believe. And then if we look at the PVO, you have a 17.5 second. So, well, you can still stealth drop with those ships. There's much more time to get out of the way. I don't know. I don't know how to really make these balanced or even fun to fight against at all. Maybe they're balanced. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to balance, but I sure know what I'm talking about when it's my subjective opinion on what's fun to fight and what isn't. It's subjective after all. I do not like airplanes in this game, man. The idea that someone just gets to fly over and click on you without any risk, it's awful, man. And there's just no gameplay there. Now, I'll save that rant for another day, but if you've looked at the proposed carrier rework, you'll know they're buffing carriers and reducing even more of the gameplay elements, which feels really, really bad. The flak will also be removed, which will likely be a massive buff to these airstrikes, because that's really all that's going to be dealing damage to planes and knocking planes out of the sky. The continuous damage isn't enough. Anytime you're really losing planes, it's when they fly into a flak bubble and you lose a bunch of planes all at once. And they're talking about removing that. Okay. We're not gonna rant about that now. Save it for the rework, okay? This is about the Vrijheid here, and an insane game that I had with it. I thought Kansas was going to kite away, but no, he is pushing in at this moment. It's a 2v2. They're way ahead on points, and because of that, we don't really have time to get back to AB here. We have to focus on finishing off the enemy ships, and that starts with the Kansas here. Not even going to risk shooting my guns. It's possible Unicum is within our detection range, or at least our gun range, which then we would be detected. So I don't want to fire my main guns. And as we've seen, these airstrikes are more than capable of dealing with these enemy battleships at our tier. Yes, we do have the pen, at least against a lot of these tier 8 and lower battleships. 32 millimeters is the key threshold, and we have 34 millimeters of pen. That's why we're doing so much damage. Into higher tier ships, they're going to start to have 38 or even 50 millimeters of deck armor, and with that, we would be shattering a lot more and not getting the massive 10,000 damage hits. Fires everywhere. Do you think this Kansas is having a good time? I mean, maybe I shouldn't be so much thinking about what other players are feeling or dealing with in their game and just enjoying the insane power level that we have right now. But I feel kind of bad, man. Like, we did like 50k damage or more to that poor Kansas. That is our Kraken, by the way, as well. I feel bad. It's very fun when you're playing it, though, I will say. Assuming you can get over that empathetic feeling, I suppose. 200,000 damage, Kraken unleashed, but still, we do need to finish off this Unicum. I'm hoping to surprise him around this corner. We see the general direction his torps were coming from. So we're on low HP, though. We do need to focus on hitting all of our main gun salvos. And there he is. We catch him off guard. And I just whiff entirely my first salvo, as well as taking the time to drop airstrikes, reducing my main gun DPM. Yeah, a bit of mistakes coming in at the end here. And the Unicum player, kudos to him, does use his main guns and finish me off. As well as I miss my airstrikes. I dumped them all in the same square. I should have spread them out much more. I also made a mistake earlier. I'm not sure if you caught it, but when I was deciding to leave my smoke there the second time after being in the cap, dealing with that Prince Ruprecht, I suppose, I should have stayed in my smoke. I should have noticed that the carrier was going over to spot the Unicum. I could have got a little more damage in on him, and perhaps that would have won us this game. Still, though, an absolutely incredible match. Really, really fun to see the absolute peak of Vrijheid power. Although without the Witherer achievement. If I would have had a Witherer yet, we had a 21.1 second reload. That 15% buff would have got me 17.9 second reload. Absolutely insane. Still, over 120,000 airstrike damage from a tier 8 with only 9.5 kilometer range. Crazy stuff. It took me a while to get this game, though. I've been trying ever since I got access to Vrijheid to get a really monster game out of it, because it's so hard to play. And I think that's exactly why I like this ship so much. It is incredibly powerful and actually feels a little unfair in the game that I had for you today, but the vast majority of the games, I was not able to use those airstrikes. It has weaknesses. It has massive downsides. It does not have the range to go to one island and just click on most of the map, cover the entire cap, plus the other side's radar islands, stuff like that, where the mainline light cruisers certainly do have that range. As for the build here on Conrad, of course, we're going with a mostly airstrike focused build, so the focus fire training thing here, but I'm also running AA Defense and ASW Expert. I would recommend this, at least for now, as these Dutch light cruisers are new, and especially as the next update comes through and they leave early access, you're going to see a lot of them. So really valuable to have the extra AA to hopefully shoot down some of those squads before they get to you. Specifically, your flak is doing that, which they're going to be removing with the carrier rework, or at least potentially, it's still in work in progress. Okay, I gotta save that rant for later. You get 50% consumable prep, though, as well, which is really nice on a ship like Vrijheid, which has a smoke screen here, too, which maybe would allow you to smoke up again after your smoke is about to dissipate. Really interesting there. Superintendent, very nice on a ship like this with a heal, powerful engine boost, and a smoke screen. Of course, running concealment because we need that 9.2 detection to go alongside our 9.5 maximum range on these airstrikes. These Dutch guns have decent DPM, but they do lack shell velocity. They're very floaty out to maximum range, as well as pen. So they are not quite as good as the mainline, I would say. But it has downsides. That's what I like so much about it. They're a bit slow on the turret traverse as well. Hit points are not terrible, especially for a tier 8 with a heal. We do really, really appreciate that. As for the equipment here, definitely going with Airstrike mod. That gets us down to a base reload of 25.8 seconds. With AR, you saw me get down to 21.1. Did not manage to get the Witherer, though, even in a game like that one, which is a little disappointing. Would have been cool to see that sub 20-second Airstrike reload. Absolutely crazy stuff here, but very, very interesting ship. Armor-wise, what armor, right? But sometimes that can be useful. And as we saw, we can still take some damage thanks to that Prince Rupert salvo in particular, but I don't think he actually citadeled me is the thing. This ship has a very, very low citadel. While you'll take some damage, I mean, waterline, I guess? Maybe he did citadel me. It's a lot of waterline citadels, guys. Yeah. I wish ships had more hittable citadels. I wish ships took less damage when they were angled and more damage when they were broadside. Maybe that's too simplistic, but that's my wish. But this one certainly with its smoke and its healing does have some pretty solid survivability alongside that incredible engine boost that has 20% engine power. It's very powerful, but limited. It's got some downsides. It's got some weaknesses, mostly to do with its range. You have to risk a lot to get so close to use these airstrikes. And because of that, it's fun. It's an interesting challenge to make use of this ship, where the mainline ones are just very, very powerful. They give up a tiny bit of reload on those airstrikes and gain incredible consistency out of their maximum range. But that's going to do it for this Vrijheid video. I'm very happy to finally get such an insane game out of this ship. I've been trying for so long, man. Felt so good to get a game like that. Unfortunately, weren't quite able to clutch it out, though. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.